And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. We have sunshine, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day out. No rain, no clouds, no fog, no overcast. Honestly, was waiting for someone to say that Trump's inauguration was bigger, but it was a beautiful day. Rebirth, if you will, of sanity, of reason, of functional governance, bright blue sky. Joe Biden gave what I thought was a good inaugural speech, did what I expected him to do, which was a lot of call for unity, a lot of call reaching across, reaching out to the people that didn't support him, and said, look, I'm going to be the president for everybody. And he did that, and he has to do that. And I think he will truly do just that. Personally, as I said from the beginning, days ago, I wanted to see something much more of, hey, how we got work to do. We're going to hit the ground running, get the gloves on, do what we got to do, and get working. Not that he didn't start working right away. Lots of things that he got to today, which great to have a functional, working White House with, oh my God, wait, a press conference, an actual press conference with an actual press secretary, someone that wasn't lying. There were no lies told during the press secretary. In fact, this is the first full day. I mean, we're almost done with the day, right? This is the first full day in the last, 1,462 that a president and a presidential administration hasn't lied to us. We should celebrate just the fact that this is the first day in 1,462 days that someone didn't lie to us. That's incredible. And look, I said before, Joe Biden wasn't my first choice, but I love this guy. I'll tell you right now, the fact that today came out, got to work right away, and sent a signal to people like me that he's serious about encouraging collective bargaining, encouraging the ability for unions to grow and workers to join and form unions and fight for collective bargaining rights. He showed me that today by requesting the resignation and then firing Peter Robb. For me, that is a huge, huge moment because, look, Peter Robb has been understand, he is a management side labor attorney. He is a corporate labor attorney. He's the guy who goes in and does all the horrible stuff to unions and to workers. And they put him in charge of the organization that is meant to help workers and encourage workers to collectively bargain. They're supposed to be the arbiter between the two and not weighing the scale overly heavily on the side of employers, which is what this guy has done. In fact, he was the guy behind Reagan during the firing of the Patco workers. That's how far this guy goes back. That's how bad he's been. So to see that he got canned, very happy. And look, I think it is the shot that we needed to hear that he's serious. When he talks about being the most pro-union president that we've had in our lifetime. That is a good thing. Now, the speech did hit on all the points. My favorite part, democracy prevailed. We went to the polls, we voted, our votes were counted. Trump, the Trump people in the cybersecurity world said, this is probably the most secure election we've had. So the votes were counted. We went through a lengthy court process. We went through a lengthy appeals process. The Republicans did their little song and dance and their pony thing, and democracy prevailed. The will of we, the people, was actually done, and that is a good thing. And as Biden said in his speech, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge because nothing bad happened today. Nobody tried anything stupid. I know there was a lot of right-wing Q-Kooks going, oh, he's never going to take the oath of office, and he's never going to sign the paperwork, and he's never going to get to the Oval Office. Well, guess what? Took the oath of office, signed the paper, and is seated in the Oval Office. In fact, adorned the Oval Office with a giant image of FDR and a statue of Cesar Chavez. And all kinds of, incredible stuff. And thrilled to have Joe Biden in the White House right now. He did say, look, democracy's precarious. Democracy's precious. It's fragile. And it has prevailed. He said, and this is where the hope that the Q folks who didn't see what they were led to believe. And look, I don't blame people for believing something that's wrong. What I blame them is when you find out that it's wrong, not changing. So here's the thing, all my Q folks, all of the Trump folks who really honestly believe that Donald Trump was not going to go anywhere. He was going to stay and fight. He got on the helicopter. All of us waited and watched for the little whirlers to go around. He then had his little send-off. They played music for him. They applauded for him. They listened to his speech, and then they put him on a plane and they shipped his behind down to Florida. He's gone. In fact, the best moment was when I was listening to the news and I heard former president. Music to my ears. So gone. It's over. There's no path for there to be a March inauguration or whatever. So now's that time where you go, okay, the 190 indictments didn't happen. All of the things all of the rumors and all of the lies and all the stuff that were out there, done. It's over. Now realize that, internalize it, go, I was wrong. Move forward. Come back to the rest of us. Come back over. Come on. You can come with us a little bit to the sane side. You can do it. And we will encourage you to do it. And in fact, I've advocated for, maybe in the recovery plan, a little mental health money if some need it, so that they can see the error in their ways and go, okay, we're going to come back somewhere to the sane side. But he said, look, politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. And I've always said that. I believe that we can sit down, we can disagree vehemently, we can have heated discussions. And one of the things that I've always believed is we can disagree and we don't have to kill each other. We have institutions that will work this out. And as he said, every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and manufactured. And he said, look, we got to look at the people who are telling this stuff. He said there is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. Each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. The rest of the speech was good. I mean, there was a lot of talk of unity, a lot of talk of coming together, a lot of talk of, we've got things to do, we've got to whip the pandemic, things to do. I was a little dismayed during the speech. And look, did I want him to stand there for 4 hours and get into absolutely everything? No. And look, I'm thrilled to have him as president. Initially, I was like, you're not really talking the issues that I think we should be going at. But it was a good speech, good call. You did the unity thing. Now get to work. And he did. He got to work. So I am thrilled about that. And over the coming weeks and days and weeks, the questions then become, what is it that we hope for this administration? I go through this every time there's a change in administrations. My hope for this administration is that they return reward to work. They returned that American dream. They revived the American dream that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. That is, I sound like a broken record. I've said it a million times over the nearly 16 years I've been doing this. And it's as true now as it the first time I said it. We have so much work that needs to be done. In fact, someone reminded me that during Obama's 2013 inauguration, I was interviewed at the inauguration by Richard Fowler. And I was talking about almost the exact stuff I'm talking about now. I want them to create jobs. I want them to be good union jobs. I want them to be infrastructure jobs. We've got so much to do. It was the same line. And here we are all these years later, 8 years later, and we're still talking about it. So again, I renew that call for Joe Biden to be the guy who finally does the things that I've been asking to get done. And that is return reward to work and rebuild our infrastructure. And I hope that happens. Because it's my view that if you really want to unite the country, if you're truly in the mindset of we want to reach out to the folks on the other side, we want to pull them in, we want to heal the gulf between us, you got to do it with jobs, good union jobs. You got to do it with opportunity. You got to do it with making conditions better, making people's lives better. As my mindset goes, if you want to unite the country, get them out of their bunkers and give them something to do. Get them out of their bunkers where they're plotting to overthrow our government. Make their lives better by giving them good jobs. To me, that's the way forward. All the words, all the rhetoric, all the flowery language, all the speeches, not going to do it. Making people's lives better will. So you answer that Reagan question of, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And truth of the matter is, most of us were better off 4 years ago. And we're going to get better. If in 4 years, people aren't better, well, then that's going to be another election for another time. But I believe that if Biden does what he's committed to do, this Build Back Better plan, and he puts people back to work, and we start to move ahead as an entire economy, not just the folks at the very top, I think we're going to be a much more united country. I think we will come together, and all of this kookery and all of this conspiracy and all of this inflammation will suddenly go down. And then the rest of us will just say, sit down and relax. So I'm excited. I think there's going to be some really good things. And I there was a sign today, and I'm trying to figure out if this is a positive or a negative sign, because I've been watching a lot of these TikTok videos and a lot of the little short Twitter commentaries and Instagram commentaries of these Q people and of these Trump supporters, just kind of almost not quite, but almost coming to this. Well, it didn't work out. Maybe we should give him a chance. And the moment was, I was driving home from work, and I saw a guy in his driveway scraping a Trump bumper sticker off the back of his giant coal rolling monster truck. And immediately my mind goes to this place of, is this a positive sign or is this a negative sign? Is this positive in that, okay, it's over, I'm going to scrape this off, I don't want anybody to know that I was over here, and I'm going to calm down, that now I can take the deep breath, I can let the air out, and I can go back to my life. Or the more concerning side of this, and we'll get to this later as well, now it's time to go deeper underground and do more plotting and more conspiracy work, so that we can then water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots down the road, of course, because as I said back on the 6th, they basically blew their wad on the 6th, and it didn't get what they wanted. It bore no fruit. There were no children there. So a good thing in my view, obviously. Now, I went back and I listened to our program 4 years ago, and today on the program we're going to talk to the 4 people we talked to 4 years ago. We're going to talk about their predictions that they made 4 years ago, whether they thought that they came to fruition, and then hopefully where we go from here, how we dig out of the mess that we're in, and maybe their predictions for the next 4 years, maybe their predictions on how we go. But I went back and I listened to myself, and that's the great thing about doing this, is I've got all these archives and stuff that I can go back and go, oh, I wasn't a complete idiot. And then I started off 4 years ago going, today is the first day of what will be the end of the America that we knew. Oh, little did I know that we would have this global pandemic and all of this other stuff. But on that day, perfectly correct, in the world that we have lived through the last 4 years. I predicted corporate America taking over regulatory bodies, on the slashing and burning of regulations. That has happened. I talked about the militarization of the police and all the the gun control toys and all this stuff that we've seen in use over the last couple of years. And it was just it was amazing that you go back and you go, wow, you were right. We were right in our concern that this was going to be one of those moments in history, and it was not going to be good. And I spent some time talking about Andy Puzder. For those who don't remember Andy Puzder, Andy was the CEO of Carl's Jr., fast food CEO. Wealthy guy, wildly wealthy guy that Trump wanted to put in as Secretary of Labor. And I was losing my mind at the time because Puzder and his ilk were basically everything that was going to be wrong with, the next couple of labor secretaries. And of course, Peter Robb that got fired today, that the NLRB and the Labor Board and the Department of Labor were going to go way to the extreme, the corporate extreme, and you were going to have these union-busting corporate lawyers in charge, i.e. Eugene Scalia, and it was going to be really bad, and it has been. Ask union leaders from across the country. This administration has been horrible, and I'm sitting here going, this juxtaposition between, Trump's choices, Puzder, and of course Scalia, and Joe Biden's, Marty Walsh, just complete night and day. Walsh is going to be somebody who's going to do everything he can possibly do to make sure that that workers get a fair shake, that the rules are followed, that people are encouraged to join and form unions, and that companies and workers sit down and collectively bargain and hammer out agreements the way it's supposed to be. Not with a thumb on one side or the other, but actually sitting down and negotiating over the wealth of that these workers create. I think it's a great thing. So I'm excited for the coming weeks and months. I think we're going to have, we're going to get this pandemic under control. We're going to begin moving in a direction to restore, like I said, reward to work, and to revive that American dream that is seriously on life support as we speak. So I got a lot to get to today. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Sarah Kendzior is going to be here to share some of her thoughts. Stick around. Right back.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the Flint Women's Emergency Brigades were founded. Genora Johnson, a socialist, was a main leader of the Women's Auxiliary Number 10 throughout the strike. A different kind of auxiliary, it built the leadership skills of women through classes in labor history and public speaking. It also set up a first aid station and child care center, raised strike funds, and walked the picket lines. The Women's Auxiliary was transformed through its actions at the Battle of Bull Run, when the women put their bodies between the strikers and the police. According to Janet Hazzett, the women moved beyond supporting the strike to participating in it. 50 women signed up the next day. By the end of the strike, over 300 women had joined. The women adopted an official uniform of red berets and red armbands. They were armed with clubs to smash factory windows when police gassed the sit-downers. Their participation in the strike was heroic, and their work continued after the victory. They sought to represent the interests of women auto workers, who often found co-workers less than welcoming and experienced sexual harassment and occupational discrimination at the hands of supervision. Many women auto workers formed the core leadership of several chapters. Historian Nancy Gabin notes that this was not always the appropriate arena for advocacy, saying, quote, "By encouraging women workers to participate in the auxiliaries, the UAW abdicated its responsibility to these workers." However, Johnson emphasized, it was a radical change to give women a right to participate in discussions with their husbands, with other union members, with other women, to express their views. That was a radical change for those women at that time. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with the new reality. The new reality of not having a president that I have to worry is going to nuke a hurricane, or going to fudge a map of where a hurricane went, or telling me to drink bleach. I'm still trying to come down from that. And look, I'm looking forward to it in the worst way. In fact, I'm looking forward to not saying the name of the president for days at a time, because someone functional is actually doing it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, well, the last 4 years. She was here 4 years ago to say how bad it was going to be. I'm curious if she's going to agree with me that it was even worse than I thought it was going to be. That's why I've asked our good friend Sarah Kendzior to come back and talk with us. Writer, scholar, co-host of Gaslit Nation. Her best-selling books are The View from Flyover Country and Hiding in Plain Sight. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So let's start right at the very beginning. You were on 4 years ago. You painted a picture that was very dark, and, well, I would say 99.9999% accurate.
Yes, unfortunately. It's unfortunate for us all that that's the case, but it has concluded, so that is a good thing.
So,
at least
we
the
made it
official
through.
part of it.
We made it through. Was it as bad as you thought it was going to be? Because you painted a really dark picture. Was this as bad as you thought it was going to be? Was it worse? Where would you put it?
It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. There was an essay I wrote for The Correspondent called "We're Heading into Dark Times." I think it came out on November 18th, 2016. You could read that and just see the whole thing laid out, read my articles about Trump and Russia and the mafia, see that laid out. The one thing, of course, I didn't anticipate was the pandemic, which made everything like a million times worse and accelerated a lot of their worst agendas, led to a massive death toll. We're still obviously dealing with that now and are going to be dealing with it for the foreseeable future. That wasn't exactly on my radar. If somebody had presented to me, how do you think Trump would handle a pandemic? This is what I would have predicted, but it's been really rough. People should never forget this. They should never underestimate this, and they should never make the mistake that this can't happen again. Now's the time to put in safeguards, to turn norms into laws, to strengthen our laws, to bring back laws that were destroyed, like the Voting Rights Act, for example, and to get realistic about how we protect our democracy, because it was slacking off in that respect that helped contribute to the situation to begin with.
Now, Trump did say today that he's going to be back, and all of that stuff. So the woods aren't clear as of yet. And I want to get into that theory of, that thought of, how's history going to look back on this? But to be honest, we're still living those days that we're still in the middle of trouble on a certain level, aren't we?
We're in a lot of trouble with, many things: the pandemic, a Great Depression economy, the worst cyber attack on the U.S. in its history, gutted departments that Joe Biden and his team are going to have to rebuild, gutted relationships abroad, white domestic terrorism, domestic, violent actors, white supremacist movements, militant movements. There's a lot going on. And then, of course, the corruption that underlaid everything. The fact that we were a mafia state for 4 years, but the buildup to that went back at least 40 years. And it was due to people not facing consequences for their actions, for criminal actors not held accountable because they were so polished, they were so wealthy, they were so respectable. Whether it was Paul Manafort or Jeffrey Epstein or Trump himself, that is the commonality. And so I think people have finally figured out that if you don't enforce consequences on these bad actors, they come back and haunt you. And they often just re-enter rotating Republican administrations the way Bill Barr did. And then they clean up crimes for other people. So that's something that we have to deal with. I think the Capitol attack 2 weeks ago made this real for the stragglers of delusion, the people who are still hanging on to it's not that bad, it can't get catastrophic, there are checks and balances. There are maybe a few people still thinking that, and unfortunately they were in Congress. And I hate that this is the way that they were woken up. I absolutely, of course do not. I wish this never happened. It's traumatic and it's horrifying and it was very dangerous and people did die and our representatives nearly died. I think, though, that they realize, yes, of course, these malicious actors, this Kremlin asset backed up by transnational organized crime, these white supremacist groups, these cultists, they will 100% take it that far. They are anti-American actors. And so we need to safeguard against them for everyone else in this country who's just struggling to survive and live their life. And nobody deserved what we had over the last 4 years. Nobody, even the people who voted for Trump, I don't think they deserve this. I don't think anyone deserves a pandemic to be managed in that way. I don't think anyone deserves this horrific level of violence and cruelty and sadism from that administration. So I hope that this never happens again. But for that to happen, to be possible, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right. And you brought up the word, the accountability word. So, are you one of the folks who are saying we definitely need to go forward and the Senate needs to convict Trump and impeach him and throw him out, completely out of office since he's out of office? Is this an errand that we have to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an errand, it's an obligation. He's guilty of the crime. He's guilty of a ton of other crimes that they didn't bother to impeach him for, but they did impeach him for this one. And what's important is that he's never able to run again. He's never able to access power again. And then the investigations need to extend into his administration for their crimes, for abuses at the border, abuse of the pardon power, the abuse of the emoluments clause, to his family, to Ivanka and Don Jr., and especially Jared Kushner and the crimes they committed in office, their criminal history, their broad network, their ties with the Kremlin, their ties with the Russian mafia, people that were pardoned who were criminals like Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn. I mean, basically, like everyone who worked on his campaign at a high level got arrested for a very serious crime, often something like conspiracy against the United States. That's what Manafort was indicted for. It's very awful to have those people back active, running around. They're not just going to like chill out on their yachts or whatever. Like they're going to come back for revenge. That's what they always do. That's what they've been doing over and over for 40 years. So there needs to be a commission and a giant investigation. We were promised one with the Mueller probe. It was, BS. It was a load of crap. Like Mueller didn't indict. He didn't interview. He wasn't thorough. He still, even though he was being lazy and selective, managed to find a ton of crimes because Trump is a crime machine. It's really hard to not find crimes when you're looking at Trump. And so, there's still stuff there. Obstruction of justice, for example, that's in the Mueller probe. That should be brought back. I mean, the American people need to know why this happened. It wasn't just that Trump is like a jackass. It's so much worse than that. It is a level of criminal complicity that goes back decades and is so sordid and vile. So it all needs to be aired out in public. And I also think, I mentioned this to you before, I think that this will help diffuse QAnon, which we now have seen the lengths to which some members of QAnon will go when they participated in the Capitol attack. And a lot of that is because they felt that conspiracy theories they believed in must be true because other ones they believed in, like Jeffrey Epstein, turned out to really be true. And the media really did cover it up and officials really did let them get away with it. They were completely right about that. But that made them believe in all sorts of, nonsensical and horrific and offensive stuff. And so I think the best way to kind of bring someone off the ledge is be like, yeah, you're right to feel paranoid. You're right to feel the government is corrupt. Here are some other corrupt things they did. Here's why they did it. And here are why some of these other things you believe in, like we don't see the evidence for that. Like, what is your evidence for that? I think that's the way to go, not mockery. Because the thing is people, now there are all these groups preying on those people. There are really serious white supremacist groups, white militant groups that are reaching out to the disillusioned Trump voters and trying to pull them into an apparatus more powerful, one that could have had a very violent and successful Capitol attack. There are still folks out there gearing up for that, and this is their prey. So I think, ideally we should try to prevent that, obviously, from happening.
Yeah, I struggled not mocking them, to be honest with you, because
some of it,
because some of it is
Junior back from the dead and whatnot is like, right. Good God.
Some of it is so far-fetched and so ridiculous. You go, how is it possible? But my fear is we're in this moment where there's all this talk of unity, that we do what we've always done in this country. The past administrations in the past, let sleeping dogs lie. We did it with Reagan. We did it with Bush. We've done it with a whole bunch. We did, even with Clinton, we did, just let it go. And that's been our history. I think now is different. I think now has got to be that stopping point where if you've done something wrong, I don't care how high in the government you are, how powerful you are, you've got to pay the same consequences that a dumb truck driver would have to pay.
Yes, I mean, that's how it always should have been. And now we see the consequences of not enforcing that. And I think, finally, fellow elites and high level actors and prominent politicians, they also see the consequences of not fighting back, not having standards, allowing elite criminal impunity to thrive. Biden's speech, I thought, was pretty good. I felt like he brought up a lot of issues that traditionally are not brought up in speeches. And, he seemed to be pushing for, like, we need to do, digging into systemic problems, not these sort of superficial issues, not superficial unity. It's hard for me to sort of figure out, well, how exactly is he using that word? And in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is his actions in the weeks to come, the months to come, the actions of his administration. But everyone should be pressuring them for truth and accountability and rigorous investigations of a multitude of crimes committed by the past administration so that we can make sure no one else is able to use those tactics and that people aren't able to reinsert themselves into new administrations. I mean, some of these guys are really old. Like, my kids refer to my book, Hiding in Plain Sight, as mommy's book about criminal boomers, but it's not just criminal boomers. It's also Jared Kushner, Stephen Miller, a lot of folks on the younger side who may be around for like 40 years. That's what Manafort and Stone were back in the early 80s. Look what they've done over their 40-year career. We need to make sure that they cannot do that over the next 40 years, or we won't have a country and, we won't have a world with things like climate change. Like, we have existential crises that the Biden administration needs to address. And I was glad to see that they seem at least willing to acknowledge this, and that Biden kicked off the day by reversing a whole bunch of Trump executive orders and putting his new executive orders in. Like, that's just a relief. There's something it's a profound relief to see it in paper. Like, it's not a promise, it's not a hope, it's a document and it's a law. And so that is very encouraging. That maybe will make me finally sleep a little more soundly at night.
Yeah, me as well. And because I had asked the other day, is it possible just to do like one blanket executive order? Just go, hey, we're gonna repeal the last 4 years.
Yeah, no
let's
kidding,
just put that in the trash heap of history and let's begin anew. I was told no, there's not one of those, but today was a good start to getting to that place.
Yeah, it was nice for me to be able to tell my kids what the president did today, and for them to be able to watch the president on TV and not have him be like a, shrieking vortex of hatred, cruelty, and lies. Like, all of that is nice. My kids have never seen a functional American government. My youngest doesn't remember Obama. My oldest sort of remembers, but really, grew up with Trump and was very keenly aware of that because I received death threats for the entirety of the last 4 years. I don't necessarily expect that to stop, but, hopefully it'll slow down a little. So they know this, they know the toll I've paid. And so they're just like, not big fans of the government. And, and I was explaining this really is different. And this is more like what previous administrations were. Like, Trump was a culmination. He wasn't a fluke. This is what it all built up to, but we have never had anything that bad, that anti-American, that authoritarian, that overtly criminal, that much tied to hostile foreign states. Like, a lot of things he did were new, and he is a sociopath and a narcissist and all these things. I was like, Biden's just not going to do those things about Trump that were so awful, the incredibly cruel, blatant racism, the way that, just so many things. So that's encouraging. And maybe, my cynical teenage daughter will be a little less like me and a little more positive about life. We'll see.
Well, we'll see. I mean, and by doing a good job, by doing the right things, maybe we encourage people to trust government again. Because look, we've had 40 years of government's the problem, and the 9 words from Ronald Reagan. The worst thing you can ever hear is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And they go and they show us that every time they're in power. I had someone the other day tell me that Trump is the new Reagan, and I'm going, wow. Not even I would make that argument because he's so much worse than Reagan. And I thought Reagan was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, and for a lot of us, like, I don't remember before Reagan. Reagan was like the, the standard. And I grew up thinking things like unions were stuff that like my grandparents were in and they just don't need to exist anymore. And, this was the message told to an entire generation over and over through the media, through politicians, through the Clinton administration, which moved to the right to match the move to the right by the Republican Party under Reagan, and then just kept moving and moving until it just exploded. And, we're now at a point where, progressives are more vocal. They need to keep putting pressure on leadership. There are so many policies that are just basic common sense and fiscal common sense, like the Green New Deal, like universal health care. Those help Americans and they provide jobs. And it's so basic. They help ward off corruption. They help ward off dependence on dictatorships, on gas station dictatorships like Saudi Arabia or Russia. That's all good. Those shouldn't be thought of as like radical, silly policies. Like that's the kind of policies we need. So I'm hoping Biden, doesn't worry about like what the press says and doesn't worry definitely about what the Republicans say. Like, who cares? Like, who cares what Mitch McConnell thinks of any of these plans? And just tries to do the right thing for Americans. And I think he definitely understands how much we're hurting. He understands how much people are traumatized. And I think, Biden's gone through a lot on a personal level. And of course, again, I don't wish that on anyone, but I do think it's lent him an understanding of grief and the need to not abandon people in their time of need. And I just hope that plays out in action and he's not convinced by a bunch of like shady advisors to let people down. Because I don't think Americans can take any more of it.
No, I agree.
Just can't.
And for me, if he does those things, by those actions, that's how you unite the country, not with words, but by those kind of actions. So last question, I got about a minute left. What's your hope for the next 4 years out of this administration? Positive, where do you find yourself?
It's like digging out of a hellhole. I mean, that's it. It's going to be rough. It's going to be difficult. I want an attack on corruption and elite criminal impunity. If you handle those two things, you can get a lot done. And then also climate change, because we don't have time. We've never had time. So that needs to be a priority. And also just one last thing is everybody needs to fight very hard for the Democrats in 2022. Even if you don't like the Democrats, we need to prevent this Republican monstrosity from coming back, because they're just going to do the exact same thing. And it's going to make the Trump administration, seem like a prelude. So let's all try to avoid that.
I'm right there with you, Sarah. It's been a great 4 years. I hope you'll continue to come back and share time with us. It's been a great having you on. You're the ray of sanity and hope, and I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Talk to you later.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, our good friend Sarah Kendzior. Seriously, it's been a bad period, but by having reality, truth, things like that being told, made it a little bit better. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1986. That was the first time Dr. Martin Luther King Day was observed as a national holiday. A powerful voice for civil rights, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. He was in Memphis standing up for the rights of black garbage collectors. Dr. King gave his life supporting those fighting for union recognition. Throughout his work as a civil rights leader, Dr. King spoke powerfully of the importance of unions. Addressing a group of Teamsters in 1967, he said, "Union recognition meant the real beginning. Union meant strength, and recognition meant the employer's acknowledgement of that strength." Perhaps his most stirring reflections on the labor movement came in a speech he delivered to the AFL-CIO in Springfield, Illinois in 1965. King said, "The two most dynamic movements that reshaped the nation during the past 3 decades are the labor and civil rights movements. Our combined strength is potentially enormous. We have not used a fraction of it for our own good or for the need of society as a whole. If we make the war on poverty a total war, if we seek higher standards for all workers for an enriched life, we have the ability to accomplish it, and our nation has the ability to provide it. if our two movements unite their social pioneering initiative 30 years from now, people will look back on this day and honor those who had the vision to see the full possibilities of modern society and the courage to fight for their realization. On that day, the brotherhood of man, undergirded by economic security, will be a thrilling and creative reality.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here's a real shocker. Evidently, the former First Lady, and I'm loving saying that former word. Evidently, the former First Lady didn't bother to write her own thank yous to the more than, 90 staff people who took care of the Trumps during their stay in our White House. Evidently, they were written by someone else and typed out and handed around. I guess there's hey, at least there was a thank you given. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is something that past First Ladies have done themselves. I know. When you're playing that much tennis, you've got little time. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, today's events. The last 4 long years, all 1,461 days of them. I've asked our good friend David Yankovic to come talk with us. David's one of the top digital strategists in the country and a good friend of the show. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
So by being a little picky, by thinking that maybe you should write your own thank you notes?
Well, I mean, she plagiarized the speech of the RNC when they got nominated, so that doesn't surprise you, does it?
Yeah, well... Yeah, I guess. So let's go back to the beginning. 4 years ago, we had you on the program talking about, then it was about the election, about all the Russian bots and the trolling and all of the attacks that were going on, and predicted that this was not going to be a good 4 years. And I'll ask you the same question I asked Sarah. Has it been as bad as you thought it was going to be? Worse? Where do you put it?
It was as bad, it was worse, but it was also not as bad, if that makes sense. So one thing I didn't count on is the resistance, and the resilience of the Democrats out there and everybody to be able to withstand, the corruption and the anger and the violence that we were going to see. I had written an article for Huffington Post called Midnight in America. And basically, it was the presidency of Donald Trump according to his word. If he got everything that he wanted, if he got everything that he, said in his speeches and things like that, what would happen? And so I wrote this article out, and it was really terrifying. And definitely a lot of hyperbole in it. But in the end of it, there was the resistance. It was groups coming out and standing up. It was. It's women. I mean, the first thing was, the Million Women March and, everything else at this time 4 years ago. And, and the kids in Parkland. And, there are so many groups that just, came out and had just had enough and, and pushed back. And so it wasn't as bad as it could have been or it should have been because of that. Because there was just such a blistering offensive. You have Scott Dworkin, who literally sued Donald Trump for everything, like stamps and envelopes and, all that stuff. I mean, we didn't let them have an inch on it. I think that it's definitely a lot worse, though, than we thought it was going to be, too. And seeing it in real time and looking back at it, it's terrifying how close the country did come to losing democracy. We came basically one bloody rebellion away from losing everything. He tried to do an attempted coup 2 weeks ago. I think that what we have right now is a really strong resilience. So I'm really happy with everybody and how hard we fought on everything. But we still have the same fights ahead of us. 4 years ago, we were talking about Russian bots. I'm still fighting Russian bots with candidates. And kind of going through it. Plus now we have Iranians and the Chinese and stuff. There's a lot of geopolitical places and things like that we're nowhere near close to being in a good spot. So, Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those days where watching everything happen, you're just like so many memories of things that you just forget about too, or you get mad about. But I think that I think we came really freaking close, and I think that we got really lucky that there are so many patriots in this country who stood up and said no, especially the women,
Yeah.
especially the kids.
No, that was remarkable, and something that we didn't predict 4 years ago. But how were you, like many of us who were this morning, woke up and watching the helicopters, just the still image of the helicopter in the yard there at the White House, waiting for Trump to get on it to go away? Because I was glued to it, going, okay, come on, let's go, time to go, get on the chopper so we can put you on the plane and ship you back down to Florida. Were you among the crowd watching that?
I was among the crowd who woke up like at 4 o'clock in the morning, was on Twitter, and they couldn't go back to sleep because it was like when you're a little kid and it's Christmas. So, I mean, for me, it was like, yeah, I couldn't. Once I woke up, I'm like, wow. And like tonight, we get to go to bed. Everybody out there, all of us, we get to go to bed with sanity in the White House again. Like, for the first time in 4 years, like, we don't know what kind of horrible things the Republicans are cooking up inside the White House and using the government to, hurt people. And that was one thing that, like, this year I started kind of really feeling despondent about was, for the first time, and I know that, like, this is something that, the black community has gone through forever and so many other people have, but I've never, as a white guy, been afraid of my government before, and thought of my government as the enemy. And I did. I thought of my government as the enemy going into this year a lot of the time, in the sense that, like, you can't trust what they're saying to you. You can't trust the information that they're putting out. You can't trust if the COVID vaccine is going to kill you or not. You can't trust anything. You can't trust that they have your better life and family, in their best interest. You can't trust any of it. And I started feeling very resentful towards that this year. And that was the first time ever that, I felt that way about my own government. I mean, I have the Statue of Liberty and stamp tattooed on my back. I have the American flag tattooed on my arm. And, like, having that feeling of like, wow, like my government has completely just left me behind, just is not working in my best interest or anyone's best interest. And I can't even listen, like, if like the COVID vaccine's coming out, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to trust the COVID vaccine that Trump is endorsing because he's telling everybody to ingest bleach. That's something I think that really kind of rocked me this year too. That's the first time that, like, the government has ever, I think, been out to get people. At least in my lifetime, like that I've seen. Like where it was enemies listed. The Democrats are like, we were close. We have no idea even how close. It's going to be 25, 30 years before we hear just how bad these plans were and how terrible things were.
No, you're right. And what it's gonna take, obviously numerous hearings over the next couple of years to find out exactly what happened. Because I always go back to, just think about what we do know, and then imagine how much we don't know that's been covered up. Because we've been focused on this pandemic. We've been focused on the infighting. We've been focused on the giant S storm that was his Twitter account, and all of the things that were happening behind closed doors. We still don't know how bad it's going to be and how much cleaning up we're going to have to do and how difficult it's going to be for the Biden administration to fix up what was broken.
And the, administrations even beyond them. I remember during John F. Kennedy, there was this, CIA operation called Operation Northwood that they proposed, which was to make false flag attacks in the United States like they were coming from Cuba. And it got to the desk of John F. Kennedy, and he fired the Joint Chief over it. And did that, and that's always been like one of those themes on American history you always hear about. And like, we literally had a president who incited an insurrection on the Capitol. And I mean, I don't even know how many operations and things like this that were greenlit. We never had corruption like this before. I mean, Nixon was nothing compared to Trump was, and the more that we hear that he did, the more selling out, the more probably treason, that has been committed with giving foreign leaders and other nations intelligence from our country. We already know he sold our country out. I think over the next, like you said, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, it's just going to continue to go. And it's going to take generations to be able to, I guess, repair a lot of this here, of what he's done. But it started today.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, because, obviously there's the other side of this. And we're, as someone pointed out to me today, we're a 51-49 country. We seem to be fairly split down the middle. And you've got, people who believe just the opposite of what we're talking about. Is there a way to engage them that you think? Is there a way to, once again, maybe have some set of facts that are universal instead of each side claiming that they have, a license to what they're saying are the facts? Do you see any hope of that changing? Do you see anything the administration can do to unite the country, as he talked about today during the speech?
Oh, sure. I mean, we've seen this before. We always come back from this. We had the Civil War. We had insurrectionists and people who were committing treason openly in the Senate and the House, and they were expelled. And, we had a full-on war where, it was 1 in 3 people in this country came back dead. And 40 years after that, 30 years after that, we were, coming back together again and coming back together again. This happens. In countries, we were tested. We didn't go to war with each other yet, and we aren't going to go to war with each other. The other side of who was saying that this isn't about Democrat and Republican. This is about extremists. You find me out of the Democrat or out of the Republican Party, I would say 3 out of 10 people or 4 out of 10 people who think that going to war is a good idea. And really, because the thing is the extremists that are out there and the people who are wanting to do violence, these are the Proud Boys, these are the KKK, these are the same people who have existed throughout all time. The Republicans went and courted their votes, they ended up bringing them out, did all that. But this isn't the first time that we've experienced this in our country's history. Yeah,
no, you're correct.
Bring this back.
The difference was, though, is we didn't have this powerful social media tool for all of these folks to find each other and to do all of this organizing in public. Because I have a Parler account. I was reading the statements from some of the most vile stuff you're going to read. About overthrowing our government, and they're taking their guns to D.C. and if someone tries to take it, they're stacking up bodies, and just all of this stuff that was done right out in public. And I know someone's going to say, "Well, it's not the fault of the social media; it's not their fault." Where do you place the blame?
Oh, it's on social media's fault, 100%. You can't. It's social media, and it's a failure of the Democrats. It's a failure of law enforcement. It's a failure on the Republican side. But I think a huge piece of this has to do with social media. And we saw it in the last week, just in the last week of Donald Trump's presidency. He got banned off of all social media, and look how calm everything was. Look at the humongous insurrection that we had at the Capitol today. We just in 1 week just removing this stuff. Social media is going to have to be forced by the United States government to, police their people when they go in with the government. That's a big piece of this, because this is where the radicalization of the right wing and terrorists and everything else are happening is on social media, and it's openly happening through these platforms. And they're not using, they're not transparent about what they're doing. They're not patrolling anything. They're just making money hand over fist on hate. It's a time for the government now to go after Mark Zuckerberg and go after Jack from Twitter and everybody, the owners of these things, and really force them to start playing by the rules that everybody else has to live by. And if someone commits a mass murder off of your platform by radicalizing using your tools, it's probably going to have to, be written into some type of law somewhere that you can be sued for this. We have to make them play by the same set of rules that everybody else plays by. You're not a mass media organization getting free speech out there. This is hate speech, and that is not protected.
Right.
Insurrection of violence is not protected. All of these things, and that's going to be coming down on the social media companies.
But what do you say? Yeah, and I get that, but what do you say to the people who go, well, then fine, they'll just go offshore where you can't touch them, like Parler went to Russia. Are you gonna block them from overseas? Because I foresee that kind of thing happening, having these social media companies for these underground fringe groups being in places like Russia who want to sow the seeds of division, as they've done masterfully over the last several years. I see that growing.
Yeah, but that's not going to be your grandma and grandpa and your mom and dad jumping on
Excellent
Facebook
point.
and seeing that the president's going to be getting arrested. These are going to be radicalized fringe people that we can then chase down and clean up through law enforcement.
Yeah, excellent point. I do want to get your thoughts on the speech today, real quick, and then what are you looking for going forward that's going to give you some signs of if we're going in the right direction?
Well, I mean, it's seeing is first off, I thought the speech was terrific. I think coming together, unity, being all the themes that Biden has been his entire life, and including coming back from Ross and everything. He's just the perfect person for the moment right now. The signs of moving forward is going to be what we saw today. Republican leadership going to that church with them and worshiping in services. These kinds of signs of bipartisanship that we're going to see. We're going to have a lot of fights. And believe me, these people are not anybody that we can really trust on any level. But and getting the normalcy back into government, that's going to be a really big piece of this. Like, it's okay if government gets boring for a little bit. It's we want this to be back to normal.
It's not just okay. It's encouraged.
Yeah, it's encouraged. Government's not supposed to be super exciting. It's not supposed to be infotainment. This isn't the WWE. This is real life. We've seen it. We have 400,000 dead Americans because we've let an infotainer reality star become president, and he tried to take us to the brink of destruction. So seeing these things kind of get back into place where normalcy's there, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for working together. One of the big things is H.R. 1, getting that passed. If H.R. 1 passes through, and the Senate, that's going to change a lot of things, which is now it's going to be Senate SR 1, which is the Anti-Corruption Act. It's a really big deal. It's the most powerful anti-corruption legislation in the history of our government. If we can get that passed, that's going to be a really good first step.
Yeah, I'm with
you. And just kind of, beating the evil back that we've seen. But, social media is going to have to take a stand on this stuff, and they're not going to. So that's one of the battles you're going to see from Biden and his team, I'm sure, coming up is going to be, if they're not going to be stopping this extremism and things like this on their platforms and hate speech and everything, then I'm sure that there's going to have to be some government that comes in on that.
Real quick, the impeachment. Obviously impeached for the second time. Do you foresee the Senate convicting him?
Oh yeah, I think that he's gone. The thing is nobody wants him. Like you saw today, he left the White House and it was 15 people. Normally there's a send off of hundreds of people from the White House or at the Capitol building. Nobody wants him here. Nobody wants to think about him, and he's a plague to the Republican Party. Because the Democrats, we're going to get to them and put their name on it to impeach and remove Donald Trump. And you can either be on the wrong side of this and we'll run every single ad and chase you till the rest of the time about the things that he's done, or you can move on and remove him and don't ever let him hold office again.
Yeah.
Plus, we need to get him done with having any kind of national security briefing. So, yeah, I think the Trump days are numbered. I think McConnell, like I said on the show a long time ago, actually probably on this anniversary show, that eventually it's going to be the Republicans that stop them. It won't be the Democrats.
There you go. And I'm right there with you. And I've said the exact same thing. David, I appreciate the time. Always great talking with you. Look forward to having you back as the new era continues. Thanks so much.
It begins now. Thanks, guys.
Our good friend David Yankovich. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
The ransacking and terrorizing of Congress by violent trumpeters is an outrage, right? Even Republican congressional leaders have rushed to assail the mob invasion, calling it a desecration of America's democratic ideals. For example, the GOP Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, denounced the invading outsiders as thugs, lecturing that self-government, quote, requires a shared commitment to truth and shared respect for the ground rules of our system. But wait, what about the insider mob? The lawmakers who routinely run roughshod over our ideals of equality and justice. So many of the pious members who are now so prissily crying out for decorum and respect for the process openly solicit special interest cash to do favors for the donors, while ignoring the basic needs of workaday people they supposedly represent. Excuse me, Mitch, but for the past 4 years, weren't you Trump's most destructive Machiavellian monkey wrencher in Congress? Yes, you were. Relentlessly stomping on truth and rigging legislative ground rules to ram his plutocratic, autocratic agenda into law. You even stoked his depraved narcissism. For weeks after it was clear that Joe Biden had won the presidency, you cynically fed Trump's fantasy that he had won, helping spread a furious disunity across America. The mob that you deplore for rampaging into your inner sanctum of power and privilege is of your own making. They're your angry political chickens coming home to roost. It's a scream and a disgrace to see not only McConnell but also self-aggrandizing icks like Ted Cruz now posing as righteous statesmen. Cruz unctuously proclaimed, "We must come together and put this anger and division behind us." This is Jim Hightower saying, so let's also shine the light of justice on the mob of insider elites who so selfishly continue desecrating American democracy.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. This date marked one of the deadliest workplace disasters in Chicago history. It took place a little over a mile offshore near 71st Street on Lake Michigan. A group of predominantly Irish laborers were working on a tunnel to bring fresh water to the city's growing south side. The work was grueling, and the conditions were frigid and dangerous. Workers were paid as little as $1 to $2 a week for their labor. On this date, the workers were housed in a wooden crib on the lake. For reasons unknown today, a fire broke out in the workers' sleeping quarters. It was rumored at the time that someone had sprinkled gasoline around to ward off bed bugs, but no cause was ever confirmed. The fire quickly consumed the wooden dormitory that housed the tunnel workers, leaving the men with little choice but to begin jumping into the freezing lake and climb onto ice floes. One man was able to make a frantic telephone call to the offshore office. Relaying the message, the crib is on fire. For God's sake, send help at once, or we'll be burned alive. The tug! And the line went dead. Accounts vary, with estimates between 40 and 70 men dying from the fire and drowning. The exact number is uncertain, because many of the workers were day laborers and migrant workers. Little information about their identities remains. Some of the bodies were never recovered. Some that were found were buried at Mount Greenwood Cemetery, where a plaque reads, "In memory of crib fire, 45 unknown men, January 20th, 1909. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it was really great to watch the inauguration today. I got to be honest. I would have loved to have been there. And watching the inauguration, which just reminds me of the two that we went to during the Obama years when I took my oldest daughter, and there were so many people that I'm a big guy. There were so many people. I had I had her on my shoulders as I was carrying her because I was afraid she'd get crushed. And it was like I was walking on air. There were so many people where I was just lifted up in this mass of humanity, walking to see President Obama's first inauguration. And the second one, I was literally a paper airplane throw away from him, which was incredible. But the last one I didn't make it, and this one I really wanted to go to. But there were plenty of flags. The one thing that would be true if Trump said it is he actually did have more people at his inauguration than Biden did. But it took a global pandemic for that to not happen. So there is that. Anyway, we're going back talking to the people we spoke to 4 years ago on this day, and one of those folks, the first time I met our next guest, Propane Jane's been back weekly, almost religiously every Monday night here to talk with us. That's why I've invited her back on Inauguration Day. Jane, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me back. Happy 4th anniversary to me, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I went back and I'm going, that was the first time we spoke, was 4 years ago on this day. And we talked about just how crazy it was going to be. We talked about, the fact that there was going to be chaos. You laid out the argument that right-wing extremists were going to do all these things. I mean, it was eerie going back and listening to what you said because, again, like Sarah Kendzior earlier, you were spot on accurate.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think when I thought back to our first chat, I was just thinking about how controversial it was at that time to say that there wasn't something quite right with Trump's mental health. And just, 4 years later to think that now, I mean, it's like kitchen table talk. Of how insane this man is. I hear so many lay people throwing around the terms narcissist and sociopath, and it just seems like everybody's kind of become an armchair psychiatrist over the course of the last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost to the point where
it's
almost to the point where I was thinking about this, that there are so many psychiatrists and people in the mental health field who have come out. And you were one of the first. I mean, at least one of the first that I saw. And now they're like, superstars like this. I was actually thinking about doing like a trading card collection of them now.
Yeah, and it didn't take long for people to stop being afraid to say it. And again, I mean, I think that's what's so shocking to me about it. Is at the very beginning, it was something that people felt like was taboo, and no, we shouldn't be talking about that. And people were certainly afraid for their careers and afraid to be sued. And I think over time, as unstable as he became, the more comfortable people became, in terms of saying that what they were seeing was dangerous and an emergency. And obviously right up to the end there where everybody was calling for the 25th Amendment. And I think it's really ironic how things came full circle that way, considering that I wanted them to do the 25th, at high noon on January 20th, 2017.
I think a lot of us did. But, the thing is I remember talking to you, and I remember thinking that, wow, this is, I think she's right. But you were saying, this is almost definitive. And over the years I've watched, and again, there are those people they were spot on from the beginning. So, you go back to those and you go, well, how did you know? Clearly you're training and you pay attention to this stuff, but how do you know this stuff?
Well, I mean, I think there was so much in his history and so much in his public persona that certainly gave an indication that he was somebody who didn't have much regard for rules and regulations, and that would sue until he was blue in the face if he felt like somebody was slandering him or trying to hold him accountable for anything. That's how he operated in the business world. And I think on top of that, the way he campaigned in 2015, he was throwing insults left and right. Some of the first essays that I wrote about his mental status were in regards to the insults he was levying against Hillary Clinton and Alicia Mercado, Rosie O'Donnell, the disabled man. The list goes on and on. Where that made it pretty evident that he lacked empathy and that he lacked decorum and just basic human decency. And so I think it was pretty apparent that he would be a bully in office. I think there were a lot of people that sort of felt like, oh, there's no way he's going to continue to do that when he's president, as if somehow a personality can just change overnight just because of the job that you're holding.
Right.
Now,
Now the question I have then, because you were right. I mean, he's not going to change. And I don't think he's going to go away. I mean, what are you expecting in these days? How does his ego, how does his narcissism, how does a sociopath deal with the kind of beating that he took? 7 million more. Biden got 7 million more votes. He lost by the exact number that he beat Hillary Clinton by, that he said was a landslide. How does he deal with that, given the things that you know about him?
Well, I mean, I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is this narcissistic injury and narcissistic slump where he's basically retreated. Now, certainly he's been deplatformed in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously he's not allowed to tweet, and he's been taken off of most of social media, which was basically, his narcissistic supply. That was how he communicated with people. That was how he riled up his base. And so I think, without that, in addition to the fact that he lost and there was nothing he could do about it. I mean, these last 2 months, he's just been consumed with trying to overturn the results of the election. And whatever little hope he had of, the lawsuits in court and getting his supporters to basically, commit sedition and insurrection and treason, to delay, him being kicked out of office, none of that was actually going to happen. But I think that he actually had this hope that it would, and that he would somehow be able to overcome it. And so that realization finally sinking in of, no, you're really gone. You really did leave the White House. I think it's a testament to how demoralized he feels, that he didn't bother. I don't think that it was just, trying to be a slap in the face to Biden to not show up at the inauguration.
Right.
I think that's also a function of the shame, and the inadequacy that he feels that he's no longer in that position, and he's unpopular.
Right. And so
he's not who everybody wanted.
Right. So the thought is because I have polar opposite views of what happens next. I think that there's one part that, like a petulant child, he's going to go to his room and put the covers over his head, and we'll hopefully never see him again. Or there's he's going to be start the cable network or start a new news channel, or end up going with that Joe Ricketts guy who's going to start the Straight Arrow News that's supposed to be straight down the middle, even though he gave a ton of money to Trump. I see polar opposites. I don't see any happy medium there. I don't see any. He shows up for functions and is patted on the head and goes away. I see him either bailing completely or wanting to dominate again.
I agree. I think it's definitely going to be an all or nothing. And I think that he's got to, in many ways, time is of the essence. A lot of his most fervent supporters are starting to lose hope. Right? I mean, these QAnon people are totally melting down all over the internet. The Proud Boys, I just read an article in the New York Times that the Proud Boys are turning on him, calling him weak, because he set them up to be massively disappointed by making them feel like this isn't over. There's still something he can do to change the course of history. And so I think that because so many of them are demoralized and because he's been deplatformed, there's just this empty vacuum. And I think that his ability to reach out to them and bring them back into the fold, in many ways is limited because of his inability to get on social media. And I think also because a lot of these networks are having time to think about, okay, where do we go in this new era? They want to focus on Biden. They want to focus on what the next step is, and to sort of do that backpedaling and give Trump more of a platform, I think is just useless and dangerous at this point. I think what really hurts him in that regard is the insurrection that happened on January 6th, because it makes it so dangerous to be associated with his rhetoric. And so I think so many institutions are backing away from that. And as far as the Republican Party goes, they're losing donors. They're losing all of these people who don't want to be associated with that brand anymore. And so I in many ways, I hope that he goes to the Fringe. And I hope that he, doesn't have that opportunity to get back and run for office again.
Yeah. Just go golfing.
I hope that they go. Exactly. I mean, I hope that they can shut down any inklings of an idea of running for office in the future in the Senate with this impeachment trial, so that he just has all of the air taken out of his balloon.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm right, and I'm hoping we're never going to hear him again. I don't have to say his name again, because to be honest, we've already spent way too much time on him, because this is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's day. I wanted to get your thoughts first on the fact that we have now the first African American vice president woman, in office. I wanted to get your thoughts on what that was like for you today.
Oh, it was tremendous. I mean, I cried every time I saw her. Just the history that's being made, and the joy that so many people around me are feeling in feeling like, hey, not only did we get a woman, we got a Black woman, we got an Asian woman, we got so many things wrapped up into one. And to finally have a recognition that we can hold seats of power. We can be in the most powerful office in the country, in the world. And I think it's a victory, not just for women of color, but also just women in general. I think so many of us were so disappointed and still to this day feel robbed that Hillary Clinton wasn't able to be the first woman president. And so I think it's really important to chip that piece of the glass ceiling away to get in as vice president. And I think that the way that Joe Biden really seems to respect her and value her opinion, and the way he's included her in everything, I think is really important too, because not only is she the vice president, I mean, Biden's not a young man, right? I mean, I think that everyone, when they look at her, is also envisioning somebody who could step in and be president if need be. And so I think that, it's such a contrast to thinking back to 2008 and that idea of people not wanting to vote for John McCain because they didn't want Sarah Palin to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. And to be in this moment where 81 million people wanted Kamala Harris to be a heartbeat away from the presidency, I just think it's indescribable.
I know it was a powerful moment, and especially having Sonia Sotomayor doing the oath I thought was important as well. I wanted to get your thoughts on the speech.
Absolutely.
The speech, hit the tones that I think everybody was expecting. I'm critical of everything. So it didn't meet what I wanted to see, but I got to be honest, it's what I expected. He hit all the tones.
Yeah.
We've got to bring unity. He was a little forceful, and I thought that was good. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
What I was really struck by was, and not just in Joe Biden's speech, but even in Amy Klobuchar's speech, and also in the poem, I think that there was this sentiment that really made you feel like we were coming out of a war. So many references were made to Abraham Lincoln, the Capitol Dome, Civil War. And I think that the country in many ways feels battered. It feels like we've been through a war, and certainly those members of Congress that were there in the seat of our government, having just been attacked 2 weeks ago, I mean, certainly they feel like they were under a major attack. But it feels like we won the battle for the soul of our nation, as Joe Biden's campaign often said, that we are a nation that has been at war with itself. And as Joe Biden said, it's been an uncivil war. And so I think that it was important for them to speak to that, because that is how so many people feel, not just the battle between, the right and the left, blue and red. We've been at war with this virus. But I think what was also really important was that he named white supremacy. He put an explicit name on what we've been facing. And that was his first campaign ad. He really focused on the violence in Charlottesville and that element of white supremacy that Donald Trump stirred up. And again, I think at that time, a lot of people felt like Joe Biden was overselling it and sort of making a bigger deal about it than it really was. And then you come full circle to us being attacked by these insurrectionists, somebody walking through the Capitol building, waving a Confederate flag. And seeing, a Confederate flag didn't even make its way into the Capitol during the Civil War. And so to see those images over the last couple of weeks of those National Guard troops literally lying down, staked out inside of the Capitol building, it really does make you feel like our country has been at war. And so I think it was important that so many speakers spoke along those lines, because that is where we are as a nation, and we have to rebuild from that.
No, and we've got a lot of rebuilding to do. And I wanted to get your thoughts because, obviously Biden's call for unity is something I think a lot of people want. I personally don't think we can get to that point until there's accountability and we find all the crimes of this past administration, the former administration, and I'm loving saying that. And we hold those people accountable. I don't know that we can begin to heal until that's until you rip the Band-Aid off and clean out the infection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we also have to normalize normal.
Yeah, like today. Today, for instance, we had a press briefing. We had a press briefing.
Exactly.
And she didn't lie.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, just the little things, right? I mean, the little things of how our government is supposed to function, how our world is supposed to function. We have to be reintroduced to all of that again. And, anytime you're in this traumatic situation, for as long as we've been in a traumatic situation, that level of trauma had become normalized.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have to relearn how our government is supposed to function, and we have to relearn how a president is supposed to function.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, do we now have to every time we see a boring bureaucrat, someone who works for like the Department of whatever, do we now have to thank them and hug them and tell them how much we appreciate them? Do we have to do that in public, or can we just be appreciative silently?
Hey, we can just be appreciative silently.
Okay.
We're still social distancing. But I mean, even, that's why I thought it was so funny when Trump got kicked off of Twitter. All these people on the right wing were saying, he has no way to communicate with people. And it's like, Twitter wasn't the only way the president was supposed to be communicating with the world, right? But that's how normalized it became.
Yep.
And I don't think that, that's something that Joe Biden is going to continue, tweeting out every move. I think that he's going to return to, his press releases, the pressers. And I think that is what is going to help people to understand that, hey, we're in a different time. We're returning to the way things used to be.
Yeah, some bit of normalcy. So what you're telling me then?
Important for healing.
So what you're telling me then is no rage tweeting at 3 a.m. from Joe Biden then?
Definitely not.
No ambient tweeting either?
He's not going to do that. He's not even going to want to do that.
And look, I think
Jill wouldn't even let him do it if he even wanted to.
There's an interesting point. So I guess the last line of questioning I've got for you, because again, there are a lot of voices saying that we need to heal, we need to unite.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that can't happen until we clear out the infection. I've been watching a lot of these Twitter and TikTok videos of these Q people and these MAGA folks who are, as you said, visually, they're distraught. The 190 indictments that were supposed to come down today didn't happen. Joe Biden didn't get arrested today. Joe Biden was actually, sworn in. He gave an inauguration speech. He signed the paperwork. He actually went to the Oval Office and did some work. All of the things that they were telling themselves wasn't going to happen. And I've been saying, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be dead wrong, but you got to admit it. You got to admit you were wrong, and then try to make some atonement and try to do the right thing. Come back to society. Is there a way? Do you think that we can embrace that crowd, or are they too far gone in your professional opinion?
Well, I mean, I don't think they want to be embraced. Is the first piece of it. I mean, I think they want to remain angry. I think they want to continue to wallow in this feigned victimhood, because, that's their identity now. their identity has become. I saw this. I don't know if you've seen the MAGA lady that's like, "I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah.
God, please save us."
Love that one. One of my favorites.
But she kept-
Satan. Everything's about Satan.
Exactly, but she kept saying over and over again, "This is our country. This is our country." And I think that these are the people that firmly believe that this is a white man's country, and they wanted a white supremacist in charge. And so I think any day that their guy is not in the office is going to feel like a loss. It's going to feel like a tragedy for them. And so I don't think that they can be embraced, because being embraced means being a part of something that they don't associate themselves with.
Right.
They intentionally want to be a part, and they intentionally want to feel superior by being a part.
Yeah, I get that, but I don't want them to go through, and maybe it's just, the liberal side of me being soft and all of that. But I don't want them to go through what we went through the last 4 years. I want them to think that, hey, you know what? We can all move together, forward together. My hope for Joe Biden is that he restores what was the American dream, revives that, returns reward to work, and rebuilds our infrastructure, and unites us not through words, but through actually getting things done and making people's lives better, even theirs.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Democratic presidents traditionally do. And we don't necessarily say you have to want to be helped by us in order to help you. And I think that they will just benefit from the policies that are put in place, regardless of whether or not they want to benefit from them. But I think the hope, more than anything, is that the temperature will be turned down to the point where, they can just be mad, but not necessarily be on the brink of violence every day. And that may end up being the best that we can hope for.
That's a start
from them.
No, because there's a guy, I was driving home today, and I saw a guy with a scraper in his driveway scraping off a Trump sticker off his bumper. And I'm like, wow, this could be a monumental moment. This could be, oh my God, I woke up, I realized, we've got to move forward. I got to get this, off my car, and I'm gonna join society. Or the other side, we're gonna go deeper underground into the bunker and plan the overthrow from there.
Well, I mean, maybe so, but again, I think that the dose of reality that they're going to be getting on a daily basis, that dose of normalcy that they're going to be getting, is going to help in ratcheting down their level of hysteria. The thing about Trump being so dangerous was that he had that mouthpiece and that platform to continue to stir these people up every day. And so I think in the absence of that, they're not going to have many avenues to go down to continue to feed themselves that junk. And so, the rest of us, I think, really just need to remain vigilant, obviously, and make sure that we're, like you said, holding people accountable so that this never happens again. Part of the healing also involves figuring out what the source of the sickness was. And so I think more than anything, this is the time to look at our media, to look at our institutions, to look at the laws that we have in place and figure out how is it that we went so wrong? What safeguards do we need to put in place so that this never happens again?
I'm right there with you. But I'm excited about the next, at least the next year into the two. I'm excited about the possibilities, and I hope you'll be back to share some thoughts as this continues. I always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
I surely will. Thank you, and have a great week.
You as well. Our good friend Propane Jane. Always great to talk to her. Look, going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the Flint Women's Emergency Brigades were founded. Janora Johnson, a socialist, was a main leader of the Women's Auxiliary Number 10 throughout the strike. A different kind of auxiliary, it built the leadership skills of women through classes in labor history and public speaking. It also set up a first aid station and child care center, raised strike funds, and walked the picket lines. The Women's Auxiliary was transformed through its actions at the Battle of Bull Run when the women put their bodies between the strikers and the police. According to Janet Hazzett, the women moved beyond supporting the strike to participating in it. 50 women signed up the next day. By the end of the strike, over 300 women had joined. The women adopted an official uniform of red berets and red armbands. They were armed with clubs to smash factory windows when police gassed the sit-downers. Their participation in the strike was heroic, and their work continued after the victory. They sought to represent the interests of women auto workers, who often found co-workers less than welcoming and experienced sexual harassment and occupational discrimination at the hands of supervision. Many women auto workers formed the core leadership of several chapters. Historian Nancy Gabin notes that this was not always the appropriate arena for advocacy, saying, quote, "By encouraging women workers to participate in the auxiliaries, the UAW abdicated its responsibility to these workers." However, Johnson emphasized, it was a radical change to give women a right to participate in discussions with their husbands, with other union members, with other women, to express their views. That was a radical change for those women at that time. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So if the inauguration wasn't good enough for you, if Donald Trump getting on the little whirly bird and heading off to Andros and getting on the big bird heading to Florida isn't enough, 3 Democratic senators were sworn in. We now have Chuck Schumer as majority leader. And I'll be honest, I'm not a huge Chuck Schumer fan. I never have been a huge Chuck Schumer fan, but he's not Mitch McConnell. So, this is one of those, at this point, don't care. If we can get rid of McConnell, I'll take Schumer. But big day, lots of possibilities, lots of hopes for the future. And I don't want to oversell it. I think there's going to be a lot of fighting and a lot of work to be done to get Biden and the administration where we want it to go. But Trump left. That I think historic. And here to share some thoughts, not just on today, but the last 4 years. I've asked Matthew Chapman to come back and talk with us. Matthew's a reporter over at the wonderful website Raw Story. Matthew, thanks for taking time for us.
Pleasure to be back, Rick.
So 4 years ago, you were here. I think it was the first time we met 4 years ago doing this show on Inauguration Day, and you were pretty much, this is going to be bad. Was it as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Well, it was definitely at least as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was certainly a bit different than I thought it was going to be. For one thing, I know that a bunch of people have said this, but I really was terrified he was going to lead us into a war. And I guess the one bright spot we can say is that his paleoconservative nationalism prevented him from leading us into a war, but it led him to do so many other horrible things. It led him to assault minority rights in the country, appoint all kinds of corrupt and unqualified judges. It led him to try to strip healthcare from working people. And, it's just been a brutal 4 years. And all I can say is that I'm really glad that our institutions held up to the extent that they did and allowed us to elect another president who can try to clean up this mess.
Yeah, and that really kind of sums it all up perfectly, because Biden is looking at a giant mess. If you thought 2009 was bad, and it was, this I think is worse because you've got this pandemic that you can't really do much other than do what we've been doing, do more on the vaccine front, but it's going to rage on and it's going to cause havoc in our economy, and our economy is on the brink of collapse. As you've got millions of people looking at homelessness and just all kinds of craziness. So this isn't a great time to be president, but it could be, because he could be the next FDR. He could be the next Abraham Lincoln. He can be the guy who brings the country back together and brings us towards prosperity in the same presidency. And so I think I've got great hopes for him.
I completely agree. And I absolutely hope that he's a president cut in that mold, because, it's not always obvious at first, because Lincoln and FDR didn't go into government, wanting to be radicals. They were radicalized by the politics of their era, the crises that faced the nation, and what was necessary to get the ship back on course. And I very much hope that Biden will be in that same vein. It sounds as though he understands the scope of the problem, and most importantly, he's got a Democratic trifecta to help him accomplish it. And that's just something that's an enormous relief to me. It's been so long since we've had a Democratic trifecta. I was 19 when we had our most recent one. So, it's narrow. So even in spite of that, it's going to be hard for Biden to accomplish sweeping change. But I think that Democrats understand the gravity of the situation, and they're going to do their best to do right by the American people and working families.
Now, you as a reporter over at Raw Story have spent a lot of time looking at the craziness, looking at all of the allegations of fraud, all of the stuff that was the making of a coup attempt in our country. In looking at that, do you see there being a way back for us, for that group of people who engaged in this? Do you see a way of uniting the country as Joe Biden called for today?
I honestly don't know in the short term. There's no doubt that many of these people have fallen down a very, very dark rabbit hole. And many of them, right up until today, believe that there was some sort of military coup that would happen at the last minute, that Trump would still be president and all the Democrats would be in jail. That's the sort of thing we're dealing with here. However, the anger and the craziness of the moment is not unique in American history. There have been periods in the past, from the Know Nothing Party, from the Second Klan. There have been these kinds of national hysterias over and over again in our politics, and eventually they die down, but they're never truly defeated.
Yeah, I mean they'll go back.
I would say.
No, I agree. I think they'll go back underground. I think once we get a handle on how things have been able to rage on social media, I do think you're right. I think things will tap down. But I also think things will tap down when we, and I've been saying this all day, when Biden moves forward on his Build Back Better plan, we whip this virus, we get the virus under control, and people's lives get better. I think everything comes back down to the Carville frame of it's the economy, stupid. If people are doing better, you get them out of their basements where they're plotting to overthrow the government and give them something productive to do. I think things get better.
Absolutely. And, it is a monumental task facing us. This virus has just absolutely devastated our communities, our economy, our jobs, our health. We have to live in fear of this every day. And I think that the administration understands the fear that regular Americans are going through, not just about the virus, but about how it's affecting their way of life. And, it's really refreshing to have a president who is going to take that seriously. I don't have any illusions that he can just wave a magic wand and make this virus go away overnight. I mean, even if Trump had been a competent president, he couldn't have done that same thing either. But I think that he really cares about the people. He cares about the opinions of experts, and those two things are going to help us get through this.
Yeah, but everything you just laid out there is why I put so much blame on the back of Donald Trump, because he did believe he could wave a magic wand and make it disappear. He thought the power of positive thinking we can wish it away or sunshine it away or whatever came. And it was it was that rosy optimism, if you will, if you want to give him credit for being a rosy optimist. It was that let it take off in the beginning and let it rage for so long before we started actually doing the right things. And I don't know that we've actually done the right things entirely, but begun to do the right things. Had he come out right from the start, and I've said this for quite some time, had he come out and said, look, we don't know what this is, we don't know how bad it's going to be, but the Pandemics for Dummies playbook says wear a mask, stay away from each other, and wash your hands. I call on my MAGA patriots to put on a Trump MAGA face mask and use my Trump soap and use the Trump ruler to stay away from each other. He'd have gotten reelected hands down.
I'll never understand why he didn't do that. It would have been such an amazing branding opportunity for him. And branding's supposed to be the one thing that man is good at.
I absolutely agree with you. Now, let me ask you this. You're obviously one of my favorite reporters over at Raw Story. You and Sarah Burris are my top folks there. What's this going to mean for the media landscape going forward? There's not going to be Trump to kick around. We're not going to have Trump to kick around anymore, or his insane rage tweeting at 3:00 in the morning. We're not going to have we're not going to have an incompetent, lying government. At least I hope not. Where do you see the media going from this point? Because look, a lot of people are pointing at you guys and saying, well, you're part of the reason for this. What do you see the future for folks like you going forward?
Well, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and it is absolutely true that for many reporters, Trump could be kind of a crutch. He was very entertaining, his nonsense, if framed in the right way. Now, I don't think that his being gone will mean that politics and government become boring again. I reject that idea, honestly. However, I think that the tone and the type of things that we cover definitely will have to change. And I hope that they'll change for the better. I hope it means that we can do more discussion of policy, of kitchen table issues that affect people's lives, of just things that will make our government run better. And I will also say that it isn't like we will run out anytime soon of craziness in Washington, because there have been plenty of Republicans who got elected on Trump's brand who are going to act like Trump every day.
Yeah, I think of the one that I've been following for a couple of days now. This gun nut Barbie, the gun fetish Barbie, who I call her. The Lauren Boebert, I think her name is, from Colorado. She's way out there. I mean, honestly, I have no idea why she's in Congress other than she made a name for herself yelling at Beto O'Rourke. That's her claim to fame. I don't see any policy initiatives coming from her because I think she's about an inch deep.
I don't really see it either. I mean, and she's barely even been in office, and she's already got these accusations surrounding the surrounding what happened in the Capitol, whether she live tweeted Pelosi's location. I will say that some of the rumors flying around about her have been fake and debunked, and that's understandable to some degree because in this day and age, people, the outrageous. It's hard to tell fake news from real news because of how crazy Republicans act.
Yeah.
However, it is absolutely true that she has not behaved the way that the congresswoman should be held to.
No, I'm right there. And I said from the beginning, someone had said, she gave the traitor tours. And I said, I seriously doubt she gave tours because I don't think she knows where the bathroom is, let alone where the secret offices are. And that was my initial reaction. And then there was the information, well, she did give tours. And I said, look, if this is it, you're in big trouble. Turns out potentially from what the information has been, thrown around that she had family members that she gave a walking tour of what she could. And I guess didn't know where the secret offices were. And that's where a lot of the myth has come and a lot of the allegations have come against her. And
yeah, we're obviously going to learn a lot more about this in coming weeks. But, honestly, my hunch is that none of the Republicans who were related to this, who've been, implicated in this really knew what was going to go down, that there was going to be violence in the Capitol. I think that they knew they wanted to whip up anger about the result of the election. I don't think that they wanted actual bloodshed.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone wanted actual bloodshed. At least I hope not. But I gotta be honest. I'm not gonna give them the naive. We've got plausible deniability. They had to know what they were doing was amping people up, and by amping them up, that Lauren Boebert, for instance, saying today's 1776. That kind of rhetoric. This is a revolution. That kind of rhetoric leads to, whether you want it to or not, these kind of violent acts.
Absolutely. I mean, whether or not there was anything intentional in there, it was reckless behavior, and they need to hold themselves accountable for it. Right. And if they won't, then their constituents should hold them accountable for it. No,
and that is the hope. Now the impeachment happened. He's left office. He got on the whirly bird, and they took him down to Florida. Are you on the he has to be removed, convicted bandwagon? How do you see that playing out over the next several weeks?
I honestly don't have any way of knowing. It is entirely possible that there will be a bunch of Republicans who use the fact that he's out of office as cover to not engage with the reality of what he's done, to just dismiss the charges on a technicality. I think that'll be the easiest way out for them, especially the ones in heavily red states.
So let me ask you this: take off the reporter hat for a minute. Just as Matthew the citizen, what are you expecting the next 4 years to look like? What are you hoping for? Where's your mind going as a citizen, not as a reporter, but as a citizen?
Well, my hope is that we're going to see a government that actually tries to deliver for people, not just for the wealthy, well-connected. I'm hoping that we're going to see a government that just tries to care about everybody it represents. And I don't think that it'll succeed in everything it tries to do. I don't think any government ever does. But I really am hopeful for the future that we can at least return to a basic level of civic responsibility from our leaders.
I hope you're right. I fear, however, that Democrats do what Democrats do, convene the circular firing squad, shoot themselves in the toe, and not get anything done, because it is such a slim margin, 50-50 with one Kamala Harris vote as the tiebreaker in the Senate for us to get anything done. And if they don't do something with the filibuster, it could be just another 4 years of absolute gridlock, and we end up no better and actually worse off than where we started here.
That is entirely possible. And I will also add this. This is something that I was actually talking about earlier today on social media, which is that people tend to forget this, but in 1992, Bill Clinton actually ran quite a progressive campaign. He's remembered today as, one of the quintessential centrist moderate presidents, but that is mainly because he spent most of his time in office under a Republican Congress, and he spent most of his time trying to come up with plans that would get some support for them. Now, if we want Biden's administration to be a little bit more FDR, a little less Clinton, our first priority should be making sure that we keep the gains we've made at the legislative and congressional level and expand on them in the midterms.
Yeah.
Because then we'll be able to have a government that can that gives Biden the space to govern as a progressive.
No, but again, that's going to take Democrats actually, putting the key in the engine, starting it up, and driving straight down the road, and not crashing into each other. And I'm hoping that Biden, having spent all that time in the Senate, understands how things get done, works whatever magic he believes is possible, and the epiphany he believes Republicans are going to have actually happens, so that we do get down the road together and we do make things better. But Matthew, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you. Hope you'll come back and share some thoughts and some of your work with us in the coming weeks and months.
Of course, Rick, anytime.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Matthew Chapman, reporter over at Raw Story. Make sure you check out their work, rawstory.com. Fantastic stuff. Got to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
imagine confronting the climate crisis with American jobs and ingenuity leading the world.
Joe Biden unveils economic recovery plan with focus on climate. Also plans blitz of action to undo Trump's environmental rollbacks. Trump unleashes his last-minute spree of rollbacks and polluter giveaways. Plus,
in a blow to Canada's oil industry, sources tell CBC News Biden is also planning to cancel the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline.
It may finally be the end of the line for the controversial zombie Keystone XL pipeline.
I've heard that before. All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The consensus among leading economists is we simply cannot afford not to do what I'm proposing.
Did he say we can't not afford to not do what he's proposing?
I think he did.
This is going to be a long 4 years. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we should mark the moment that this is our final Green News Report when Donald Trump is still the president.
Yep, as we go to air, it is the eve of Joe Biden's inauguration as the next president of the United States. Donald Trump and his outgoing administration, however, are using their last hours in office to jam through as many rollbacks of public health, energy, and environmental standards as possible, leaving a clogged up mess for the incoming Biden administration and a tangle of what critics are calling legal tricks to tie their hands. Since Trump's decisive election loss in November, Washington Post reports his administration has finalized more than 24 rules, rollbacks, and rubber-stamped permits. Most of the last-minute giveaways benefit polluters, including new rules in just the last week to cut the royalty rates that oil and gas companies pay for extracting the public's natural resources.
Because by America first, he means pay America last and least.
Exactly. The Trump Energy Department rolled back energy efficiency standards for furnaces and water heaters, ensuring consumers will pay higher energy bills. And on Friday, Trump Interior Secretary David Bernhardt used his discretion to slash more than 3 million acres of protected habitat in the Pacific Northwest, more than 15 times what the department had originally proposed, opening up to logging companies.
Wow.
The incoming Biden administration will have to spend months unwinding these policies while simultaneously also trying to enact major initiatives to rebuild the economy amid the pandemic and fight climate change. Biden is planning his own blitz of executive orders to be enacted over the first 10 days of his term to mark a clean break from Trump's disastrous policies.
Executive order wars.
Yeah. According to Biden's incoming chief of staff, Ron Klain, that includes moving to begin the process to formally rejoin the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement.
Nice.
Biden also will reportedly revoke the on-again, off-again cross-border permit for the controversial Keystone XL tar sands pipeline from Canada.
Also nice.
That will likely mark the death knell of the project.
We'll see.
But to pass meaningful, durable legislation, Biden will also have to navigate the political minefield of Congress, where Democrats hold only razor-thin majorities in the House and Senate, and Republicans are predicted to monkey wrench and obstruct.
What?
In a speech late last week, Biden called on Congress to move swiftly to enact his emergency economic relief plan to revive the economy. It includes major provisions to create jobs by beginning to address the costly impact of man-made climate change on the nation's decrepit, aging infrastructure.
It's time to stop talking about infrastructure and to finally start building an infrastructure so we can be more competitive. Millions of good-paying jobs that put Americans to work rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our ports to make them more climate resilient, to make them faster, cheaper, cleaner, to transport American-made goods across our country and around the world.
And a majority of registered voters of both parties in the U.S. want the federal government to deal aggressively with man-made climate change, and they support initiatives to fight it, including many of the provisions in Biden's plan. The new survey from Pew, conducted after the November election, found 2/3 of registered voters say the development of clean energy sources should be a high priority for the federal government.
Nice.
More than 70% support stronger fuel efficiency standards for vehicles, and building a national electric vehicle charging network.
Also nice.
And more than 80% support proposals to hire unemployed fossil fuel workers to clean up old mines and abandoned wells.
Nicest of all.
This and other polls show that overall, the vast majority of American people are ready and wanting the government to invest in clean energy and climate. But will Congress?
We shall see. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the question is, going forward, what will the now democratically controlled Senate do on the impeachment front? They're going to move forward, clearly. Will you get 17 Republicans? Are you going to get 2/3? Are you going to get to that 2/3 number? Are you going to get, that many Republicans to come forth? Going to be interesting to find out. There are some who are saying, Mitch McConnell has signaled that he might. In fact, McConnell's words, recently, pointing directly at Trump, kind of tell the story that he's ready for Trump to be gone and would love nothing more than to cut him off at the knees. But understand, 22, you got a lot of Republicans up for re-election, more Republicans than Democrats. And if they want to keep what they've got and maybe take back that one additional seat to get McConnell back the majority leader status, this is the political calculus. And this is the problem that I think everybody has with our political system. That everyone's thinking about, I got to, what's going to be in my political interest, instead of actually being statesmen and doing the right thing. In this case, the right thing is you convict. You'd have convicted any one of us. You'd have convicted any working person. That's why I thought it was interesting that Al Gore said that if he were still in the Senate, he would most certainly vote to convict Donald Trump and be done with him. And then you could have the 51 votes. If all Democrats stuck together with Kamala Harris, that would preclude him from ever holding office again, from getting all of the things that then come with it: the lifetime pension, the Secret Service protection, the travel allowance, all the perks that come in the post presidency. I have this thought that even if they do convict him, I don't think they take everything away. It's just not how Democrats act. But I think we got to get first through the conviction stage. And I know I've had a bunch of people say, no, the Republicans, they're going to toe the line. There's no way. And I'm kind of in that camp, that there's no way the Republicans are going to turn on Trump unless the base continues. Again, it's all in the political wind, which again is one of those things that just drives me crazy. And I go back to Inauguration Day 4 years ago, where, during that program, we talked about, what the next 4 years are going to look like, or what these last 4 years have looked like, and fairly accurately. The kind of chaos, the kind of division, the kind of sowing that rip us apart, focusing on white supremacy and dividing on race lines, and incompetent government. I mean, it was eerie to go back and listen to what we were talking about, because it was so accurate. Now, honestly and truthfully, it's not that any of us are clairvoyant or have crystal balls that we were able to see the future. It's who Trump always was, and it's who he will continue to be. So there were no surprises. We got what we got, and we got what I think we deserved, because we knew going in, this is how bad he was going to be. And interestingly enough, there are still people who think we're better off now than we were 4 years ago, which is just mind-numbing. But we got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, and a lot of things that we're doing here at the program. Looking forward to on your calendar this Saturday night. Mark it 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to be doing the Rick Smith Show Trivia Night, a way to get together, talk about issues, policies, and do it in a trivia format. Going to have some really top special guests. Going to share some thoughts. I'm excited about it. You can see it here on our Twitter page, our YouTube page. We'll get links out, all that stuff. But looking forward to that. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can get the app. Take the app. Email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.